Ladies and gentlemen, until about 45 after or so, we have Dr. Paul Craig Roberts on the line with us today. And Dr. Roberts, of course, was the former editor of the Wall Street Journal, former head of policy, Department of the Treasury, number 2 there, the father of Reaganomics, has been listed by many publications as one of the top 10 or top 50 economists out there. And you have all these fake neocons that he was a big critic of. He hoped Obama was going to do what he said he did, and I know lately he's been saying, my gosh, it looks like he could actually be worse if that was possible. Bush only tripled government. Obama's doubled it in 1 year, so that'd be a, I guess, tenfold increase instead of a tripling in 4 years to 8 years, depending on how you cut it or slice it. So he's with us to talk about that, some of his columns that are syndicated, why the Chinese laughed at us, and where all this is going. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, good to have you here, my friend.
Thank you, Alex.
You bet. Break it down. I mean, there's a lot going on, but what state are we in right now with the White House grabbing industries, telling banks what to do, saying nobody can audit them, they're above the law, Obama going back on everything he said? I mean, this is getting crazy.
Yes, looks like pursuit of power has gone to their heads. I certainly agree. And I think it's hurting Obama. A lot of his fans are disturbed about him, and and of course the Republicans will turn that to their advantage sooner or later.
And then so we'll be thrown out of the fire back into the frying pan and back and forth. How does this end when both parties are owned by the same corrupt interest? And that whorehouse called Washington just eats, drinks, and marry, not even caring if the country collapses. They'll just move to Switzerland.
Yeah, it's really kind of like the French government, isn't it, before the French Revolution? I mean, that's how out of touch both parties are. I think what may happen, Alex, of course I don't know. Nobody can know. I think what may happen is that the general overreach of the United States government, the economic overreach, you know, the foreign policy, the military, they just overreach in so many places that they get so many problems that they suffer a huge defeat. I think defeat is what they're headed for. If we think about the Iraq War and all the trouble and the long, drawn-out process until we finally caught on and started paying off the insurgents with money, if you think about all that trouble, why do they want to get in 10 times as much trouble in Pakistan and Afghanistan, much larger, more rugged countries, meaner people? It doesn't make a great deal of sense. You would think they would have learned, good gosh, we came close to getting our butts kicked in Iraq. What do we want to take even worse risk? And then if you look at the financial policy and you say, well, look, we let the financial gangsters make fools of us and deregulate them and turn them loose, and they've wiped out half of the savings of the American people who denied themselves consumption and put away money for their old age, and now the banksters have destroyed half of it, and we let them con us into deregulating them and giving them a free hand to rip people off. And now, how do we respond to that? Well, we give them trillions of dollars. But we won't do anything for the homeowners, and we let the car companies go bankrupt because we want to bust the unions, but we won't let a bank go bankrupt. And how do they think that plays with people? I mean, even the brainwashed American public sees through all that. And then the question is these deficits. You know, like this year, the deficit is 4 or 5 times bigger than last year. It just cannot be financed. So, and next year, the same thing again. It'll be another $2 trillion in red ink. When you have half of your budget in red ink, that's like when you're in a major war, like World War II or something. and you're in that situation, how do you finance it? The world hadn't got that money to finance it, and so that financing problem, I think, is going to threaten the dollar's role as a reserve currency. And, of course, that weakens the power of the United States, because the real power of the country is not based on some kind of inherent right that we have. It's based on the fact that we have the reserve currency and can pay our bills in our own currency. So if we lose that, we've lost the bulk of our power. And yet they're taking great risk with that important power by adding, $4 trillion in 2 years. And it's not just what they're adding to the accumulated federal debt, which is large. It's the fact that they got to come up with $2 trillion in borrowed money this year, and another $2 trillion in borrowed money next year. And there's not $2 trillion anywhere in the world to lend us. And so there's only two places that money can come from. One is another sharp decline in the stock market, in which equity holders flee from stocks for the safety of government bonds. That's one way they can finance the deficit. The only other way is to print the money. And if they print the money, and the world will notice it. In fact, the Chinese have been complaining for 6 months or more about the possibility we're going to print the money to finance us. And they keep complaining in louder and louder voices. And recently in Beijing, the audience that the Treasury Secretary Geithner had laughed at him because he was so stupid. He didn't even understand that he cannot simultaneously tell the Chinese that he wants a strong dollar, but he wants the Chinese currency to rise. And that their investments are safe. Their dollar investments are safe. Well, obviously, if the Chinese let their currency rise relative to the dollar, their dollar holdings are worth less. And they're not safe. They're getting less dollars.
But Dr. Roberts, Geithner, that little pinhead, he's not stupid. He knows that was pure bull. I guess he just thought he was talking to an uneducated American audience on economics instead of a Chinese, group of college students who were mainly economics students.
I don't know, Alex. Maybe, but it's a terrific risk to take. We're the superpower. We're the financial superpower. We rule the world, and the university audience laughs down the Secretary of Treasury of the United States.
No, I agree, but I think he's so arrogant. I think he's so arrogant he thought he'd get away with it. I agree with you that it's a big risk, and that the luster, the aura, the cloak of infallibility of the private Federal Reserve and these bankers and these corporate crooks is starting to fade. And you're right, that's a danger. It's good to have their power fade, but it's also in a way bad, because when they fall over like a giant oak tree on us, it could crush us. But I guess it's better than being their slaves. But the question I've got for you then on this issue is, where does it go? Because in layman's terms, they're already monetizing debt. Isn't the Federal Reserve and the Treasury already engaged in chicanery with each other when people don't buy all the bonds they put out on the market? Or how do you see this unfolding? Is there any way out of this? And then B, isn't this like a Mexican standoff? It's kind of crazy like a fox or a method to the madness. Bernanke and them know that China has its main investments with us, so if they start dumping the dollar, they're going to destroy their own market. But at a point, it won't matter because it'll start inflating currencies. And then, you're the economist. Explain it to me.
Well, so far, Alex, it's going just as I predicted. I said that when they announced they were going to buy $1 trillion of debt, $300 billion in Treasury bonds, and $700 billion in mortgage bonds, I said, well, that's monetization, and that's going to drive up the interest rates, drive down the bond prices. And lo and behold, that's exactly what's happened. Interest rates have risen on the treasuries, and the prices, which is the reverse of that, have gone down.
And it's harder to get a home. And
so what Geithner thought or Bernanke, all of them, thought was that, hey, we can drive down interest rates by buying these bonds. But instead, they've gone up. And so I would imagine as the Fed buys up more of the bonds they're issuing to finance this year's budget deficit, the interest rates are going to rise higher. And so then they're faced with, what do we do about the real estate crisis? The rates are rising. How does that help? It doesn't help. See what I'm saying? It hurts. And so I think that's what I say, that they're creating more problems than they can manage.